In the year 1162, on the cold and windswept steppes of Mongolia, a baby was born clutching a blood clot in his tiny fist. To the nomads who witnessed it, this was no accident. It was an omen, a prophecy. This child, they whispered, would one day grip the world the same way he gripped that blood. They named him Temujin, and he would grow up to become the most feared man who ever lived. Genghis Khan. But before the empire, before the conquests, before the millions of lives he would end and the millions more he would father, Temujin was just a boy nobody wanted. His own mother, Hoelun, had been kidnapped by his father, Yesugei, in a violent raid. She was already married to another man when Yesugei tore her from her husband's arms and dragged her across the steppe to be his wife. And when Temujin was born, the resemblance was undeniable. He carried his father's face, the face of the man who had stolen her life. Many historians believe Hoelun looked at her firstborn son and saw the violence that created him. Temujin grew up without affection, without softness. The steppe was unforgiving, and his family was no kinder. When Temujin was just 9 years old, his father took him to find a bride, a girl named Borte, who would become the love of his life. But on the way home, Yesugei stopped to share a meal with a rival tribe, the Tatars. They recognized him, and they poisoned him. Yesugei died slowly, in agony, on the long ride home. Now Temujin was the man of the family, a 9-year-old boy responsible for his mother, his siblings, and a clan that immediately abandoned them. Cast out into the wilderness, with no horses, no protection, and no allies, Hoelun and her children were left to die. But they didn't die. They ate roots. They hunted marmots. They survived winters that would have killed grown warriors. And during those brutal years, Temujin developed a darkness that would never leave him. His half-brother, Begter, was older and stronger, and Begter began stealing food from the family, fish and birds that Temujin had hunted. To a starving child, this was unforgivable. So Temujin made a decision that would define him for the rest of his life. He and his younger brother Kasar tracked Begter into the long grass. They drew their bows, and they killed him. Temujin was barely a teenager, and he had already murdered his own brother to feed his family. When Hoelun learned what he had done, she screamed at him. She called him a wolf, a killer who would devour his own kin. But Temujin had learned the lesson the steppe was trying to teach him. Loyalty was everything. Betrayal, even by blood, had to be answered with death. Years passed. Temujin grew into a young man. He returned to claim his bride, Borte, and for a brief moment, life seemed kind. Then the Merkit tribe came riding. They wanted revenge for the kidnapping of Hoelun all those years ago, and they took it the same way it had been taken from them. They raided Temujin's camp, and they stole Borte. Temujin had no army. He had nothing. But he had two things that no one could take from him: his rage and his cunning. He called on every favor he was owed. He bowed to old allies of his father. He gathered a small force, and he rode after his wife. When he found her, she was pregnant, and no one, not Temujin, not Borte, not history itself, knows for certain whether the child was his or the child of her captor. But Temujin did something extraordinary. He raised the boy as his own. He named him Jochi, which means guest, a quiet acknowledgement of the truth, and a quiet act of mercy. This was Temujin's first true victory, and it taught him something he would use for the rest of his life. He could win. Over the next 2 decades, Temujin did what no one in the history of the steppe had ever done. He united the warring Mongol tribes, not by birthright, because he had none, but by sheer force of will. He rewarded loyalty over bloodline. He promoted commoners over princes. He executed traitors no matter how powerful they were. And tribe by tribe, enemy by enemy, he built an army of horsemen unlike anything the world had ever seen. In 1206, at a great gathering of the tribes, he was given a new name, Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. And then he turned his eyes outward. He smashed the Western Xia. He shattered the Jin dynasty in northern China. His armies moved faster than any in history, riding 3 horses each, sleeping in the saddle, drinking blood from their mounts when food ran low. They could cross hundreds of miles in days. They appeared where no army should be able to appear, and they showed no mercy to cities that resisted. When the Shah of the mighty Khwarezmian Empire, modern-day Iran and Central Asia, beheaded Mongol diplomats and sent their heads back to Genghis, the Khan's fury changed the course of history. He brought an army of nearly 200,000 horsemen down on the Khwarezmian world. Cities like Bukhara, Samarkand, Urgench, and Nishapur were not just defeated, they were erased. Populations of hundreds of thousands were killed. Skulls were piled in pyramids as warnings. It is estimated that the Mongol conquests killed 40 million people. Some scholars believe the death toll was so massive that it reduced the planet's population enough to lower global carbon dioxide levels. Genghis Khan literally cooled the earth. His armies pushed westward into Persia, into the Caucasus, into Russia. They defeated Russian and Cuman armies at the Battle of the Kalka River, the first time Europe truly understood what was coming for it. After Genghis's death, his sons and grandsons would push further still, into Poland, into Hungary, into the gates of Vienna. The Mongols were a tide that nothing in Europe could stop. Only the death of a great Khan, thousands of miles away, called them home. Genghis Khan himself died in 1227. The cause is still debated: a fall from a horse, an illness, a wound in battle, or even, according to one legend, killed by a captured princess who hid a blade. His body was carried back to Mongolia in secret. Every person who saw the funeral procession was killed. The slaves who dug his tomb were killed. The soldiers who killed the slaves were also killed. A river was diverted over the grave. Horses trampled the ground flat. To this day, no one knows where Genghis Khan is buried. He left behind the largest contiguous empire in human history, stretching from Korea to the Caspian Sea. He left behind a legal code, a postal system, religious tolerance, and the first true Silk Road of safe global trade. And he left behind his blood. Genetic studies suggest that 1 in 200 men alive today, roughly 16 million people, are direct descendants of Genghis Khan. The boy born with a blood clot in his fist did, in the end, grip the world. And the world has never quite let go of him.